Hello and welcome to episode 66 of Off the Bandstand. My name is Christian Wiggs. I am your host. Today's episode is Mike Saylors, a celebrated trumpeter, composer, arranger, copyist, educator, and bandleader currently living in Austin, Texas. Mike is hardly a stranger to the various jazz scenes across the globe, with his work taking him to Europe, Japan, Canada, and New York City, where he co-leads the New Alchemy Jazz Orchestra. In addition to his work on various Broadway productions, Mike has shared the stage with the Gerald Wilson Orchestra, John Hendricks, McCoy Tyner, Marcus Belgrave, Willie Nelson, Dale Watson, Rodney Whitaker, and John Clayton. In this episode, we chat about our mutual admiration for curating involved shows for an audience. We also talk about a record off the beaten path with a fascinating history, and a castle gig that needed more than a little magic to satisfy the guests. Moving on to the featured release this week, this is Let's Duel from the New Alchemy Jazz Orchestra, an original composition written by Saylors out of a series of singles released in 2019 from the 17-piece big band. If you want to support this release directly, you can head over to the newalchemyjazzorchestra.bandcamp.com, and for all things Mike, all the time, you can follow him on Instagram at @TheRealMikeSaylors. Now moving on to our featured Bandstand Presents event, on Monday, February 21st is the rescheduled date of the Christian Wiggs Big Band meets Benny Manak III, followed closely on Saturday, February 26th, the Christian Wiggs Big Band meets Stephen Feifke Night 1, with Night 2 being the very next evening on Sunday, February 27th. Tickets are available for the limited in-person audience at monksjazzclub.com and bandstandpresents.com, and as always, every show will be live streamed with links to donate in the top right-hand corner of the screen, with the exception of the February 26th show, Night 1 with Stephen Feifke, which will be an exclusive live audience. That is it for all of these shows and mentions we want to talk about this week. Let's dive into episode 66, Mike Saylors. This is Off the Bandstand. Something that I had learned more so than I thought before was that you are a man that wears many hats with a lot of different talents, being a copyist, arranger, MD, trumpet player, but also a very good golfer, to my shame, at Topgolf the other day. How much of that, like how early were you starting to play?
I grew up playing in North Carolina. You know, golf is a huge thing. And, well, maybe you don't know that, but golf is a huge thing. Sure. And so I started playing because when I would get out of school for the summers, you know, both my parents worked. I was a latchkey kid, you know. And the babysitter for me and my brother was my dad would drop us off at our local golf course at 7 in the morning, and then he would pick us up at, 6. So we would play like, 72 holes in a day, and the membership at the golf course was $150 for the year.
Whoa. Okay.
So it was a really bad golf course, and, I grew up pretty, in a very loving family, but we didn't have a lot of money, so it was like perfect for my parents because it was the cheapest childcare you could imagine. My father gave me and my brother like each $5, which allowed us to like have lunch and then have a snack, and get a Gatorade or two. And then we just would play 72 holes like every day in the summer. So
whoa.
I grew up playing a lot. I should be better than I am, honestly, for how much I played. But
I don't know about that. Didn't you say you're a +2 handicap?
No, I'm not +2. Right now I'm like a 3 or 4. +2 means like you're 2 under 0. Okay. That's in golf. I know it kind of is a little confusing, but I'm like a 3 or 4 where I'm clearly playing, but I'm so busy right now that I haven't even played in like 2 weeks. So it's like music. It starts to go downhill really fast when you don't touch your instrument for a couple of days.
Sure. Well, we talked about that in the last Bandstand episode, that you were like, oh yeah, because when we talked, it was episode 8, so it was like right in the thick of the pandemic, and you were just like playing.
I was amazing. I miss those days, honestly. I miss not having anything to do except play golf. Just kidding. I'm glad we're working again, but still, right.
Did you ever think about doing that? Because you got a scholarship to go and do that at, what was it, UNC Greensboro? So like, did you ever think at all about that being a profession before music?
No, I never was good enough, and I liked trumpet more. I mean, and it wasn't even like, it wasn't like I got some like offer from the university. It was like, hey, do you want to come play for the golf team, and we'll give you, like $1,000 a semester. It was like, not like I got, approached.
Sure.
I wasn't that good of a golfer. I'm better now than I was then, but I liked, I was a baseball player when I was growing up, and I was very good at baseball. And then I kind of jacked my arm up, and I still have this problem with my arm where my tendons across my elbow don't have a lot of elasticity. So if I throw a ball or a frisbee or something a couple times, my arm completely goes numb.
Oh man, whoa.
So yeah, it wasn't a big deal, but
Sure.
it just really put an end to my baseball career early. So I started playing the trumpet when I was in 7th grade, and I was like, I have a very addictive personality when it comes to hobbies and stuff. And so I was just like playing the trumpet all day, every day. And so by the time I had graduated high school, I was like, I know what I want to do is music. I just don't really know the path I'm going to take with it.
Was it initially jazz, or was it something? Was it like
I was
the
a
traditional
music
route?
ed.
Like,
I was a music ed major for 4 weeks,
okay.
and I had signed up for all these classes, like where you learn how to play the clarinet and these methods classes, and I was like, this is not what I want to do. So I changed to a jazz major. I mean, I was really interested in jazz because my band director is a great trumpet player who was like the guy in my area who was, getting calls to play jazz music, and so I was really interested in the music, but I thought, okay, I'll go to school because I want to be able to get a job when I get done, like be a teacher, like he was, But I quickly figured out that wasn't going to be the thing for me,
Then it goes straight over to Michigan. Was that like immediately after the
No, I
Greensboro thing?
took. So I did my undergraduate degree in 4.5 years. I don't even know why I stayed that extra semester. I think it was, I have no idea why, but 4.5 years at UNCG, and then I took a year off and I worked on cruise ships and was playing around North Carolina doing some cool gigs. I played in this band called the North Carolina Jazz Repertory Orchestra, which is a funded big band that has a concert season. So I did that, played on cruise ships, and then so I took a year off and then went to Michigan State.
I hear that the cruise ship vibe is either like you love it and you're built for it, or it's like not the move. How did you fare on those ships?
I liked it, but I wasn't in the ship band. I was with a featured act.
Okay.
So it was a small big band playing like big band music. So I loved it. But I wasn't doing the production shows. My only regret is that I was not single when I did it.
Okay.
That was, that's my one regret, because, there's things that happen with these cruise ships,
Sure.
but I was engaged at the time, so I missed out on that aspect of the cruise ship life.
Engaged to your
No.
current one?
I was engaged to an opera singer in
Gotcha.
my 20s.
Oh, opera singer. Okay. So how do you like having a partner who is completely removed from the musical aspect?
It's good and bad. Like, when you date a musician, at least the musicians I dated, it's nice for them to be like, to have a partner that's kind of in awe of what you do. That's parts just for your ego. It's cool.
Sure.
My wife like does not care about what I do. Like she likes it because I like it, but she's not. And she does like some jazz. Like she loves Billie Holiday. She loves, like Louis Armstrong and that kind of stuff. But like the music that I dig, she's not really into, which is like, at the end of the day, great.
Yeah.
But it is nice when I would date people before her, and they're like, they would come see you play, and they're just in awe of what you do because they might play or something. My wife is not like that.
Yeah.
So, but it's, at the end of the day, it's cool because, also, it's hard. I know people who married musicians, and like, man, you got to work a lot because you're both doing the freelance thing.
Yeah.
So it's can be, stressful.
Yeah. If
She
not,
has a day gig. It's, she's we know her check's coming at the end of the week.
Right. The security is nice.
Yeah.
Right. I feel the exact same way with Lydia, is that like she enjoys jazz and will definitely be, I think that's the biggest thing, is that they are supportive. Like they're
Sure.
like fully supportive, but it's not something where, we talk about the people who are like totally in awe. The musician dating lifestyle is usually like they're in awe and then they realize how much we're out, and
Yeah.
then it's like the allure kind of goes away.
It's tough.
So if it's kind of, moderate, the investment from the onset of the relationship, it kind of helps to balance things out. And also for Lydia, it's really great for me because of the fact that she's not like a huge jazz musician, but appreciates it and will come to the shows. I can really get like an opinion from her of like, okay, if I'm trying to reach an audience that is not necessarily exactly jazz,
Yeah.
is this speaking to you as someone who prefers more like Indian singer-songwriter? So it's good to be able to,
That is
bounce
good.
those ideas.
I do that with my wife as well. Especially as I'm getting older, and thinking more about like, oh, how people will receive this, or oh, hey, what's the song I can cover that people like?
Yeah.
She just got me into Feist.
Okay, I don't know Feist.
Y'all know this band, Feist? Yeah, it's awesome
Okay.
band, like incredible. And I've heard of the name of the band, but for Christmas she wanted this like really super rare record that they did that I guess they only had it. We sound like complete noobs right now. People probably will know this, but they have this album that's like pretty rare. And so I found it on eBay, and got it for her. And so we're listening to the music, and I'm like, wow, this is like incredible music. And my first thing when I hear music like that is like, oh wow, I could like cover this music. I could do this in my band. It really translates because the musicality is so strong. It's so yeah. My wife is great to do that thing with, but also like she won't come to a gig unless I like say, hey, will you come to this gig? And she just,
sure.
But just cool. It's
Yeah.
preferable.
Right. I find that I'm usually always listening to either big band or vocal records or trumpet players, just because we've talked about how that used to be like a very central part of my kind of musical rotation. But at the same time, like in the big band, we'll do Tallest Man on Earth, or maybe Thomas will suggest to me, be like, hey, do you know this, this Stevie Wonder tune from one of the lesser known albums? What is the music that you're listening to when you're not diving into just the old bebop records?
I love yacht rock. I love Steely Dan. I grew up listening to like Motown, so I love Motown. I love Stevie Wonder, the Platters, the Peddlers. Anything from like the 60s, 70s, 50s, that kind of stuff. But I love yacht rock and some 80s stuff, some 90s stuff too. It really, I love Tribe Called Quest. Love like early 90s hip hop. I listen to a bunch of stuff. Honestly, like with Apple Music and stuff, a lot of times I'll just, think of a band like, oh, wow, I haven't thought about this band in a while, and then put it on, and then it leads you to all this other music. So I listen to a bunch of stuff. I probably listen to that stuff more than I listen to jazz now, honestly, because when I'm practicing, I listen to jazz a lot because I'm trying to learn a song or I'm trying to learn something that somebody's playing. But like when I'm in the car, I don't really listen to a lot of jazz unless I found a record that is really resonating with me. Oh, wow, I really like this. But I think the older I get, the more I kind of need to pull back from jazz sometimes, so I don't get burned out on it.
Yeah.
I went a long time in New York of like not listening to jazz at all, like just listening to podcasts, not listening to music, because I was 24/7 just working and gigging and writing, and I was like, wow, I have to not do this so I can enjoy it when I'm doing it, so
Right.
Yeah, so I listen to a lot of stuff, honestly. But I love Steely Dan. That's like one of my favorite bands.
I wish I do that, man. We got to do some Steely Dan charts because
we can. Yeah.
I asked John Mills because he was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." I was going to do a John Mills impersonation, but I feel like it would be more disrespectful than fruitful. But he was like, was like, yeah, like what kind of chart would you like to write for the band? And he was like, well, I love Steely Dan.
He
That was like
does.
his number one thing.
Yeah,
I
he
think he
does.
said verbatim, he was like, I might be the single like biggest fan of Steely
I
Dan
just
on the
gonna say
planet.
he knows like a ton. One, he knows a ton about all music. I mean, he can talk about music in a way that few people can, like who's on records and stuff like that. But he really is super knowledgeable about Steely Dan. I remember somebody asked a question, like very obscure question about Steely Dan, and he was like immediately answered it, like it was like right there on the tip of his tongue. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, Mills is great.
Yeah.
But he loves Steely Dan for sure.
Amazing. Something that you and I think, quickly bonded over an early conversation was that when you got to town and you kind of reached out and then we played on a gig, we both talked about how we love shows, like people putting on shows, whether it has a theme or just where there is a very clear attentiveness to the audience and the relationship that you're building, equal to that of the music that you are like presenting to them. So it seems very fitting that you are doing these candlelight concerts
Sure, right.
and curating a lot of those, because that is, I think, what has been missing. Not to say people here haven't been doing that, but I feel like just in a holistic sense, that's kind of an old-fashioned thing, right, to have those kind
Yeah.
of shows. So how did you get, because they're doing stuff, the Fever Up thing is happening all over the country. How did you get connected with them here?
How did I get connected with them? Oh, you know what? It was through another guy in town named Mike Mellinger, who's a tenor saxophone player.
Okay.
He runs the Austin Jazz Workshop. They do concerts in high schools and middle schools and stuff. They reached out to him, and then I don't think he just like didn't want to do it, so he recommended me. So that's kind of how our relationship started, and then we were talking about shows, and then that was like in 2020, so we were really going up and down, and so shows got booked and shows got canceled. But I told them, I said, look, I know they are doing shows in town, and I'm the kind of person who, one, I know how to put a show on, but two, I'm also an arranger and a writer. So like, if you need somebody to curate these shows, then I'm your guy. So I sent them my stuff and what I had done, and they were kind of, they were over the moon that they could just hire one person to do the music and then put the band together and contract it and all that stuff. So they hired me sort of as like I don't know what you would call it, but anytime there's instrumental stuff in Austin, they call me to, put the band together, get the music together, and then make sure that when we hit, it's rehearsed. So it's good. It's a good relationship, and they're amazing to work with. They really take care of the band. The compensation's very good. They're very, they make the artists feel like they're appreciated, which is like the number one thing. I think a lot of times it's like just making people feel appreciated.
Yeah, the staff there when we did that one on Friday was just super
Oh,
accommodating and very,
they're
very
awesome.
kind.
Yeah, they're so kind. Yeah.
Yeah, you're also not a stranger to like some of the most revered rooms, like Dizzy's, Blue Note, Carnegie, Lincoln Center, Jazz at Lincoln Center to be specific. Man, who are some of either the greatest showmen or showwomen that you have seen or played with between all of the different metropolitan cities?
I saw Benny Golson play one time, and Benny Golson really, like when I was in my 20s, and the way he navigated leading the band was like really eye-opening, because he treated the audience like they knew nothing about jazz music, which is probably the truth, So I do something that he does that I saw him do, where, if the piano player is taking a solo, I'll face the piano and give a visual cue to the audience, like, hey, we're listening to this person play now, and then when they get done, like pointing at them, you're like, that in the audience, I know they really appreciate that, because I saw them with Benny Golson. It's like, it brings them into what we do, because a lot of times people don't even understand what improvisation is, and like what it, like, oh, this has been worked out before, or like what's going on. Like, there's no visual cue of where to listen, or to put their attention, like there is with, more popular music, where there's a front person and you're watching them, or there's dancers or there's singers, that kind of thing. So, But I mean, I don't know. In New York, it's so common where people really know how to play for the audience, and I, I grew up playing just like jazz in situations where it's the background music, and you don't have to worry about putting on a show. And I've done enough of that in my career that I don't want to do that anymore. So, not that I don't play background music, I'll do that,
Sure.
but when it's my thing, it has to be a show. I'm not just playing tunes. Like when I see people do that, just playing songs with no, through composed storyline of the show. It's just like, I love jazz and it's boring to me. So I just don't, everything I do when I put on my bands, I put a lot of thought into who's going to be in the band and what music we're playing and making sure that we bring the people into what we do. They're not going to easily come to what we do. We have to bring them into what we do. And so in New York, a lot of people, when Marsalis is great, even though he's sort of soft-spoken, but the way he talks, it brings people in. Brian Newman, great front person. I worked with a band called Duchess for a long time, which is a kind of like a Andrews Sisters type band,
Okay.
but modernized. They have great interaction with the audience. But all the bands in New York do that because you're playing for jazz rooms where people are paying $50 to come see you. You can't just play tunes.
Phone it in, right?
You can't just play tunes, which is so common. You can't just play tunes.
Yeah, I have a huge point to make on that. Very quick, side note is I think I saw Dan post about it being like Benny Golson's 93rd birthday just like a few days ago. But your story reminded me of when Benny Golson came to Texas State, maybe like, I don't know, 5 years ago. And he was so great at entertaining the audience with like so many stories. And he would be funny about it too.
Sure.
He'd be like, he'd stop in the middle of a story and he'd be like, I wonder if any of you guys are thinking that I'm talking too much. My wife says that I talk too much, but that's why I do these fly out dates,
Right.
And then would go back to the story and it would always be it felt curated because of how concise his storytelling was and how engaging it was, but you could tell it was just him truly having a relationship with the audience.
Yeah, well, if you watch videos of, like, Dizzy Gillespie is a perfect example of this. When you see videos of Dizzy doing a gig, he was funny, and it was a showman, and it's so important, and it's really lost on a lot of people, it's lost on a lot of people. So it takes so little effort to be able to, I think, present the music in a way that anybody from any walk of life can like really appreciate. You don't have to be a jazz fan to be into jazz. You don't have to be a musician to be into jazz. It just takes a little bit of effort, The music is so strong, it speaks for itself, But, cats show up and they're wearing like a T-shirt, and it's like, they don't make it special. You have to make it special. This music's, it deserves that, I think. Anyway, I don't want to
Absolutely.
spill the tea on cats. But.
No, you're fine. Well, it's cold brew anyway, so you wouldn't be. But specifically kind of as we were talking earlier about the idea of taking music that is not necessarily within the jazz sphere, talking about Steely Dan or Stevie Wonder, which I would say is definitely jazz adjacent, right? I think that we have to be inventive, especially now, on how we're going to present our music and these standards and whatever, big band or small combo idiom in order to like bring in people who are outside of our jazz sphere. Like we really have to be kind of inventive in that way to a certain extent.
I agree with that. Yeah. I think everybody should play the music they want to play.
Yeah.
And I think that I do think that is a way to bring people into your music, or but I think that everybody should just as my own personal thing. You should play the music you want to play, and if that means doing covers of music that's outside of the jazz idiom, that's cool. If it means you want to play bebop from 1943, and that's it, that's cool too. I think that if you know how to play for people, they both can be super successful. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
both can be super successful. And so, yeah, it just means thinking about like, you know, how the songs flow, like knowing about the songs. My wife was always talking about like you should tell a story about the song. What was this song like? What was the composer thinking about when they wrote this song? Like people care about that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Jazz musicians, a lot of times they don't even know the composers to the songs that are written. You know, it's like, okay, I
Yeah.
mean, can we at least know that? You
Sure,
know,
sure,
like
sure.
so. You know, you're making a valid point, but I think, you know, everyone should play the music they want to play,
Yeah.
but just do it with conviction. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's all. You know, so I'm
Yeah.
not disagreeing with you, but it can be the other way too. You know, you can be really super hyper focused. Like, I want to play the music of Ornette Coleman, and that's it. Like, okay, cool. I saw Ornette Coleman when he was, you know, alive. He came to Bass Concert Hall and he played all the songs from like the 1960s that you know from those records, and people loved it. But it
Yeah.
was, you know, it was a nice stage, nice lighting. You know, they wore suits. He talked. He was funny.
Yeah.
You know, it was a show.
It was a show, right?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of like putting on shows and kind of what I was getting around to a little bit, which, you know, kind of dabbles in both ponds a little bit, because you were saying that this person truly is like kind of a jazz musician at heart. Was you just did this kind of show where it reached a whole nother demographic with Dale Watson.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And as I take it, it was like a smash success.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was super sold out. You know, Dale. I've known Dale for, gosh, I played in his swang thing with twang band my entire, you know, the 3 years I lived in Austin before I lived in New York. And I told him back then that, you know, Dale, you're a jazz musician, but who sings country, you know, or country western outlaw, you know, does his thing. But like the way he approaches music and the way he plays and the way he sings is just like, kind of reminds me of like, you know, the old Rat Pack way of phrasing and the way he dresses. I mean, he's just such a entertainer.
He's funny too,
But
man.
it's so deep as a musician, like so deep, you know. And so I told him even way back then, I said, I'm gonna do a show where like you sing in front of a big band. And I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we're gonna do it. Then I left, and then the whole time I was in New York, you know, he would come through New York, and I would go sit in and, you know, hang out with the band. And even then when I would see him, it's like, I haven't forgot about that. Like, we're gonna do that. So when I moved back to here, you know, he was one of the first people I reached out to. Was like, I'm back in Austin. We're going to do this as soon as I can find a place. And so I started working at Parker a bit, and then Chris Kamura is the kind of the person who facilitated it all. So, but it was great. You know, we did a bunch of Sinatra tunes. We did some of Dale's tunes. We did an Elvis tune. And, you know, that's part of what I think my selling point is being a music director, being an arranger. And if you hire the right cats, you know, and you have the skills to put it all together, it kind of runs itself, which it did. It was great, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Has there been demand for that to happen again? Another
A little
Dale
bit.
Watson show?
I want to bring it to some performing arts centers, but the problem with that is that Dale is super busy.
Yeah.
So it's to nail him down, it's really tough, you know. So, but I'm working on some stuff for the fall. Some performing arts centers in Texas. So, you know, I think it'll happen, but, you know, it's difficult. A lot of schedule wrangling.
Yeah,
you know.
for sure. Yeah, I feel like you are, you know, how you were saying, like, you really kind of get, I don't want to use the word obsessive because that feels like a negative connotation word, but like with hobbies that you really like dive in. Specifically with musical ideas and like show ideas, like what are some of them or the characteristics of them that like keep you up at night, or ones that you like, do you have ideas that you just jump out of bed in the middle of the night and you're like, I have to go write that down?
This one I'm doing one here on the 11th. It's a show called Love is a Drag, and it's the music from this pretty obscure record called Love is a Drag for adult listeners only. And there's a great story behind it. I won't go into it, but I don't know. It's, you know, I don't know. Honestly, just, I don't really ever think about it. kind of thing. It just something will pop out to me like, oh, this is a great idea, or this music is really striking to me. Like I want to play this music. So I don't know. It's a good question. I don't ever sit down and like think about them though and brainstorm. I mean, maybe I should. I'm not sure, but I don't know. They just sort of come to me, I guess. You know.
Well, I'm now really interested. What is the story behind Love is a Drag?
Love is a Drag. Have you heard this record before? Love is a Drag is this record that came out in 1963 that featured a male vocalist singing songs, like love songs, to a man.
Okay.
Which, you know, back in those days, it was always, if it was a love song, it was a man speaking to a woman.
Sure.
You know? So he took these standards we all know, you know, like Bill, you know, from that Jerome Kern tune from Showboat, The Man I Love, and he sang them in a way that was, he didn't change the words, which is what a lot of male vocalists do. A lot of times they change the words so you're singing to a female. He didn't do that, and so back then, you know, they're not as hip as we are socially now. Sure. It was a big deal. Like, you know, the musicians didn't want to be named on the record. The vocalist wasn't named on the record.
Interesting.
And but the record itself is so honest and like the arrangements are really good. But just I don't know. There's magic on the tunes. I don't know exactly what it is. You know, but it had a big social impact. Like it was Frank Sinatra's favorite record. He bought like all these copies of it and would give it out as Christmas presents when people come over to his parties. It was Liberace's favorite record, and it just had you have to hear it. But there's something about the songs and the interpretation and the way the melodies are delivered. It's just so perfect.
Yeah,
and so that's what we're going to do. We're going to do all that music. Kenny Williams is going to sing. So I'm just transcribing the arrangements, essentially, and we're just going to do the record down, you know. So, but things like that, you know, I get really excited about music, and then I want other people to hear that music. And maybe it's something off the beaten path like that, you know, like that record. You know, so, yeah.
I mean, all these years later, was it ever found out who the musicians were on the record?
It's known now because there was a guy that I think actually is from Dallas who did some digging and then put out the word. He was trying to find out the information, and then the record producer was like, you know, on his deathbed or something, and reached out and said, "I know the whole story because I paid for the whole session." So there was an article in Jazz Times about it and The Guardian. But my wife actually found that record. I don't know how she found it. But she found it and was playing it one day, and I had no idea about it. And I was like, "Wow, who is that? It sounds amazing, you know." Like, oh, this is this record. It's like, you know. I started reading the back cover, and there's a lot of great records like that are obscure. I mean, I really dig finding obscure records, and that is one of them. It's like I had never even heard of it, you know.
Yeah. And so you have the physical record at home. We were talking about that when I was at your place the other day. Was that you were saying like, I feel like people need to have physical records so you can read liner notes. You can, but well, here's the thing. You know, not to keep going on the Love is a Drag thing too long, but well, screw that. I want to know more about it. What are in the liner notes? Is there much information at all?
Yeah, because I have a reissue, so it talks about the story. It talks about what it talks about, you know. It was so scandalous back in the day to have these songs recorded in this way and why it was and all this stuff. But it doesn't really it doesn't talk about names, you know. Okay. But it's well known now who the singer was. I can't remember his name. It's Gene something. He sang with the Kitten Orchestra for a long time. I mean, I can't really remember what is in the liner notes, to be honest with you. But on that subject, like I mean, I have a really big vinyl collection that my friend Aaron Kimmel in New York, great drummer who plays with Aaron Deal's trio, got me onto vinyl. Like having vinyl and like, you know, having the physical thing and be able to read and you know, a lot of this music was, you know, mastered in mind of being played on vinyl, so that I really think that's how a lot of jazz music should be heard, is on vinyl. So I don't own any CDs, but you know, I own a lot of vinyl. I'm
Yeah.
constantly always buying it.
I really liked the idea of having a collection specifically of vinyl, just because it's also, and this might sound like I'm like lessening the impact of just like the fullness of the vinyl, but it's great artwork
Oh
to have
yeah,
up too, you
yeah,
know? And
yeah.
then you get to pull it off the wall and then take the record out and put the thing on. But I think there was a time where I was like, oh, well, let me get some prints of these vinyl. I was like, no, why don't I just, put those like little vinyl hook things up
Yeah.
on the wall, a little
Yeah.
shelf, things. And it really became apparent where I was like, oh, I want as many of these that I can find and open them up and read after I read the liner notes of Kind of Blue.
Sure, sure.
Just talking about that Japanese style of drawing and
Sure.
making art and how that related to the music. I was like, oh, this is brilliant, and kind of the whole reason why I started the show is I was like, oh, you get so much more out of the music when you understand the people behind it. Like you were saying, if people don't know the composers,
Yeah.
it's like try to get in the mindset of these people,
Yeah.
and it's more accessible than you might think.
Yeah, and it's also it's a physical thing of the music. It's like they're, especially kids nowadays. Young people like my students at UT. The way they listen to music is like via Spotify playlists. So they don't know, one, they don't know the side musicians on the recording, which is like in and of itself like really bad. To not be able to like know who the saxophone player is on Suddy and Brown. Like I played that for the students in my class this past week, and no one knew that it was Harold Land playing tenor saxophone on the recording. It's like, I get it. People are young and like, you need to have time to learn. So it's fine that you don't know something, but you need to be ingesting music in a way that will at least allow you to learn
Sure.
it. If you listen to music just on a Spotify playlist, you see it's Clifford Brown and that's it.
Yeah, right.
So you don't know the other musicians in the band, which is not good. You need to be able to know what these people sound like and how they played, right? So then, the sound is not good, and you don't know it's not good until you hear that record played on vinyl. You're like, wow, this is a complete different listening experience.
Yeah.
And you have the physical thing, and you can listen and see how the musicians or the producers listed the tracks. So okay, I'm a young person now. I can start to learn how to tailor my set lists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Rather than just like throwing a bunch of tunes at the wall or being like, okay, what should we play next? It's like, that's really not good. That's not how these people thought about music. These masters that we love, that's not how they thought about it.
Yeah.
Miles Davis went on the road for 2 years playing the same 10 songs, So like, they thought about how they were presenting their music, to get back to that. So if you're just listening via Spotify playlists, you really are missing a lot about the music. So so I'm doing a record this year that's going to be put out on Nick Finzer's Outside In music label, and like I'm just going to do vinyl. I'm going to
cool.
do maybe 200 or 300 CDs. They, the labels, they make you do that so they can send them to radio stations and whatnot. But like, I'm just going to sell vinyls. I don't even like CDs, and no one has a CD player anymore. So it's kind of dead technology. So, but vinyl, like people buy vinyl.
Yeah.
So I don't even remember what the original question was now, but
we were just talking. We were just going off of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
idea of having vinyl, and specifically having that connection with the liner notes, and the personalities
it's so
and such.
important.
Man, there's taking it even one step further, and I haven't mentioned him on the show in a few episodes, so I think I get one. But Kurt Elling's record that he did. Oh boy, now I'm going blank on it, but it's the live record where they do that Johnny Hartman and John Coltrane record.
Yeah.
And the very first track they do, It's Easy to Remember, but it's a recounting of how the session came to be, while I believe it's Lawrence Hopgood, it's on the record, is playing like the changes, basically. It's Easy to Remember,
Right,
but he
like
never sings it.
They did the songs all different, right?
Yeah. But it's like paying tribute to that record, kind of like the Love Is Direct thing, even though that's the more straight ahead thing. But opening it up he melded together the idea of doing a tune and telling, doing like a spoken word type thing, but
Sure.
telling a story,
Yeah.
and to include that as like a track on the thing is just, it's pro storytelling to me.
Yeah.
And it's the manifestation, the out loud, the delivered version of liner notes. Not to say that that's a substitute for it, but I remember I was like, oh, what's going on here
Yeah,
when
it's
I
a
first
cool
heard it. But
idea.
it's,
Yeah, it's a cool idea. Yeah.
yeah. You know, you also have, kind of pivoting over, you have Lowdown Stompers, you have New Alchemy, Higher Calling, and I don't think I've ever actually told you this explicitly, but the inspiration for me to do the big band was because of
New Alchemy?
because of the Higher Calling. Well, I mean, of
Oh,
course, I
sure.
later came to find the New Alchemy stuff, but I was here helping Colin with during like the June show that you did. It was like late June. And I hope you'll forgive me for sending a text in the middle, but I was helping do the cameras, and I just texted Thomas, and I was like, "This show is so undeniable," and like your way of like talking to the audience, I was like, "We need to do something before you leave for Frost." I'm curious because you have started groups now in multiple different cities. What are some of the, I guess, not trials, but what are some of the challenges that you've found? Because you've built such a following here in town. Like, obviously, whenever you took over the last weekend here at Monk's because of the rescheduling stuff, you know, those shows sold out, like, immediately. What are those challenges that you've faced in your development of building such a strong, dedicated following in, you know, the different scenes like New York and Austin?
Oh, I never thought about that way. I don't know. I don't ever think about that. I just, well, those bands, the Lowdown Stompers essentially is just a wedding band essentially. And when I moved to New York, my first year, I maybe played 10 gigs. It's really hard when you move there to get work. And I was hanging out a lot at this bar called Mona's on the Lower East in Alphabet City, and they were playing traditional jazz music, and I loved that music. I listened to a lot of it, but I didn't really know how to play it. Started hanging out there because I didn't really have anything else to do. On Tuesday nights is when they have this jam session there. They were playing traditional jazz, and I was talking to some of the people who played that music, and they just were like, "Yeah, we're making so much money." Doing private events and this stuff. And so I didn't have anything else to do, really. I was doing some arranging, but nothing, I was just living off the savings I had amassed here in Austin, which was dwindling at that point. And I said, well, I'm just going to start my own band, make a website, and just see what happens. And it just took off, I mean,
How so? Like, what was the kind of inciting incident that really made it
I don't
take off?
know. I mean, I put together a good band. We did some good recordings. We had some good videos, but I have no idea. I think it just was right place, right time. I knew how to make websites and do SEO and that kind of stuff. But when we were, the first year we probably did 100 dates. I mean, all private events. It's a private event band. But it allowed me to have some financial, okay, now I'm cool.
Yeah.
I can now I don't have to worry about making my rent.
Sure.
There's some cushion here, which allowed me less stress and the ability to go do other things. So yeah, I don't know, but everybody who had a band like that was popping off. I mean, we were everybody was just so busy, and that allowed me to hire people that I really respected onto my gigs, and because they were, these, we call them club dates in New York, but they pay really well. They're super easy, and you get to play tunes, and you're backing up a vocalist. It's really fun. But through that band and some connections I had made here in Austin, I got asked to be the eventual music director of Sleep No More, this Broadway show I worked on for a couple years. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't created that band, but I wouldn't say we had a following or anything like that, but we were busy, But through Sleep No More is really how my career really started to, go somewhere.
Sure.
But it's because I was doing that, I was able to, so the show is set in 1941, the day after I hope I'm getting this years right. The day after the U.S. enters into World War II.
Okay.
I hope those dates work. Um,
We'll
and
just crudely Photoshop, or like not
sure.
Photoshop, edit it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the show, it's all the music in the show is jazz.
Okay.
You know, and so they need 2 bands a night. So I was contracting 2 bands 7 days a week. And so at first I was hiring myself on all the gigs. And so I played 7 nights a week for like 4 months.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, after maybe having 1 or 2 gigs a week, you know, now I'm working 7 nights a week. I can hire really good musicians on it because the gig paid well. And that really helped me to, you know, like my career to start to go somewhere, because I had something to offer to other musicians and I was playing a lot. So I was getting a lot better. I mean, when I moved to New York, I really did not have it together. I mean, I really could not play, you know. And because, you know, there's 1,000 trumpet players in New York who are amazing, you know, and I wasn't on the level at all. But playing 7 nights a week was literally it changed my playing career, because I was playing with all these great musicians who I had no business being on stage with, but I had a gig that I could hire them on.
Yeah.
And I, you know, learned the tunes that I just would say, hey, call the tunes. If I don't know one, just play the tunes. Fine. I would go home, you know, wake up the next morning. I'd write all the tunes down. I would learn them all, and then go back that night and then start calling those tunes again.
Yeah.
And then, hey, what's that thing you played on the last 8 measures of T for 2? You know, like, can you show me how to play over that harmony? And, you know, yeah, sure. Yeah, here it is. So.
And they were accommodating to you.
Yeah, I was hiring them. They wanted to.
Oh,
they
sure.
wanted to work. You know, like I had all of
Yeah.
a sudden, I'm hiring a lot of people. I'm contracting a lot of people. You know, which I've always wanted to be that kind of musician who not only just played but contracted, arranged. You know, composed. I grew up around people that way that did that kind of thing. You know, even in high school. You know, like I was playing gigs with this guy in North Carolina who was the contractor in, you know, that part of the state. A great tenor saxophone player named Wally West. He was a contractor, and he, you know, so he's on his own gig, but he's contracted 2 other gigs out. So, you know, it's like I saw that, I was like, that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, right.
You know, not only because you can make more money that way, you can, but I like that side of the business. I enjoy that. You know, I like selling my band to somebody if they want to, you know, they're wanting to hire the band for a, you know, a wedding cocktail hour. I like that part of the business. You know, it's as enjoyable as playing. You know, I like that. So Lowdown Stompers led into Sleep No More, and then I was on the road full time with the Hot Sardines while I was this music director for Sleep No More.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was super intense for like 2 years. I was contracting, you know, probably 20 musicians a night, being on the road, you know, 125 nights a year. And then coming back, when I came back to town, I would still be working and playing gigs, just jobbing around the city. So I did that for 3 years. Left the Hot Sardines, then was on Broadway for a long time. And then through Broadway, I realized that wasn't really for me, you know. But I knew if I was going to stay in New York, that's what I was going to be doing, was playing on Broadway, because it's very lucrative, and I just saw my career going that way. So when you say creating a fan base, I've just never really thought about my career like that. You know,
Sure.
I just try to play music as best as I can. And you know, the thing with the Higher Calling Orchestra is that, like, that whole band came about because I've thought about my career in such a financial aspect for so long, and I got to the point where I came here and I didn't really have to think about it that way. Luckily, I have a job at UT that I really love and enjoy, but I just was like, who are the people I want to play with? What is the music I want to play? Like, let's just do that. Like, we're in a pandemic. No one's working anyway. So, like, let's just not think. Let's just, you know, like, what kind of music do I want to play? So that's why I picked those 4 cats, you know, Joe Russo, who's oftentimes not really available because he's out with Sleep at the Wheel all the time. And then two people I played with the most, Andre Hayward and Elias Hossinger. And then, Daniel Dufour, David Mescatique, and either Ryan Hakler or Marcus Varela on bass. And so the whole name was just like, we're just gonna play music. I'm not gonna worry about like making a ton of money off this. I want the cats to be paid well.
Sure.
You can ask any of those cats. I always take care of them. Even if I don't make any money, I always take care of them. And it resonates with people, And when I play here, I think what I do resonates with people because, I think I play well, but I try to make it fun, make it fun for them. So I think that's why I can, sell some tickets. But it's not it's not a lot. But for a jazz room, it's nice to be able to know that, I can sell some tickets. That's cool,
Yeah.
But I don't ever think about that kind of thing. I just think about like, I want the right cats. And you can ask Colin. Sometimes I'll do a gig here, and if I can't get the cats I really like to play with, I just won't do the date.
Yeah.
Because I know if I have them behind me, I can do anything.
Just about anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any, because other than the fact that those people can all just throw down, you listed some of the top people in town, are there any specific characteristics that you look for in musical collaborators that just makes the musical magnetism strong? Like things that really you're like, this is the thing that I want in my bandmates?
Well, they got to be easy to work with, for sure. That's the paramount thing. They got to play good, but like Andre and Elias, I knew when I was thinking about coming back, I told my wife, I was like, I'm going to put a band together with those two cats. Like those are going to be the two guys I want to work with, because not only do they play so good, but they know how to play for people, particularly Elias. He really knows how to play for people. And he toured with Maynard Ferguson and Ellis Marsalis and knows how to play for people, you know. Andre is like one of the best trombone players to ever live. So, of course, I want to be in his sphere, But I just want to play with people that are really easy to work with and play their asses off. Like, those two things are the most important thing, for me anyway. I just, I worked with enough people that I don't get along with. And I'm luckily in a position where I don't have to do that if I don't want to. So I oftentimes just don't.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Man, I was losing it yesterday. I showed it to Lydia and it didn't quite resonate with her, but the Documentary Now sketch of that co-op musical and just the whole thing being canceled. I texted you, I was like, were you on this thing? Because I was looking at it pans over the band for exactly 1 second. And I don't think I saw you, but
I'm not in the actual sketch, but I played in the orchestra that did the recording.
Yeah. Right. So I have to assume that opened up a whole nother side of my curiosity about all of the jobbing stuff in New York and recording sessions like that. Can you recall any particularly either crazy or just super cool hits? Because to be on a thing like Documentary Now that's produced by Bill Hader and Fred Armisen and it's got Taran Killam and John Mulaney. I mean, that's I have, when I'm not listening to music and focus on music, I'm just trying to absorb as much comedy as possible. That's something that's just conducive to our line of work, in talking to an audience. But yeah, again, to the original question, can you think of some particular jobbing things that were super cool?
Gosh, I mean, that's that I don't miss living in New York at all. I love living in Austin. I love playing in Austin. But the one big difference, one thing I really miss about New York is those kind of gigs, because they're so prevalent. I don't know. I mean, gosh, I played on all the morning shows at one point. With different bands coming through town. There's a ton of recording sessions. I mean, gosh, there's so many of them. I can't. I barely remember that one, honestly. The only thing that's really memorable was that there was a full orchestra, which I didn't really do a lot of that kind of. I mean, nobody does a lot of recording like that in New York anymore. The recording scene there has been whittled down a lot. But gosh, I don't know. I mean, they're all stressful. I'll tell you that. They're all stressful because that vibe. One, it's like a real New York vibe with the the time is money thing, and you don't want to clam a note or anything like that. Luckily, I was playing second trumpet, so I'm just like chilling. The things that stick out to me were, like I played Midsummer Night's Swing, probably 10 times with different bands. Those things are always super fun. It's at, Damrush Park in Lincoln Center. There's 5,000 swing dancers. It's, they really take care of you. It's like, the pay's unbelievable. It's like, but it's like, it feels like you're, like in the, Dorsey band back in the 40s playing these huge swing dance things, and so I played that. I mean, I did a lot of touring, fly out dates to like, I played, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to seem braggadocious, but there's a ton of stuff. And the jobbing scene, what you're talking about, recording sessions and doing one-offs, there's a ton of that, honestly. And it gets to the point where it's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
No, I honestly, it's so much stuff that I don't even really remember anything particular. I remember the morning shows because they're so early. The call times are like 3 a.m., But I don't know. That's the part about New York I sort of miss, but at the same time, it's also very stressful. Like one of the reasons why we came back for me personally was starting in like year 6. I started having these panic attacks, and they were sort of happening like once a week, maybe twice a week, and I wasn't telling anybody about it. Not even my wife, but I was like having them, and so I'd never had a panic attack before, so I didn't know what they were, but it's everything there is so stressful. Getting to your gig, being on the gig, it's very like, a lot of pressure. Everybody is really, really, really insanely good, and so. I mean, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but, like that documentary now thing was great, but honestly, I don't even really remember it. I remember playing second trumpet on it. That's it. But that's the big part about New York that's so different from everywhere else is that when you're in the scene, you're every day you're going, recording session or rehearsal in the day, and then you go home, you change, you come back to the gig. It's intense.
Yeah.
It's intense.
You put on Facebook the other day that you wrote 16 charts in 20 days. It was like right before that Dale Watson show.
Yeah.
And obviously doing the copying and arranging thing for myriad different groups is very much a part of your like schedule and your regiment. And in our last bandstand conversation, you also said that being in the pit, because like the producers there for those Broadway shows, they've heard it a million times. So any slight variation they pick up on immediately. They're like, what was that? And then you don't want to be in those like producer's notes at the end of the night. So how did, and also just talking about the panic attacks and all those different things, how did the stress of being a copyist and deadlines with that compare to the stress of kind of the imminent, like, all right, this high, B flat's coming up on beat 2.
Sure.
Like that's very in the moment. I know you have a little bit more time with writing.
They're different. It's different stuff. I mean, probably people don't know even what a copyist is these days, but so I'm a copyist for the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra and the essentially Ellington thing that Jazz Lincoln Center does. So everything that the Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra performs, they publish under their publishing wing of Jazz Lincoln Center. And so, what it means essentially is they'll hire an arranger and a composer to arrange or compose a piece of music, and then I'll take that score and then make the parts and make the score really super legible. So when we get in the rehearsal, there's no questions, So, and for me, because I'm an arranger and a composer, I feel like I have a good grasp on doing that, because sometimes there'll be a wrong note, or there'll be like, oh, this is sort of a questionable way to write this indication, like, so I can write it a little simpler,
Sure.
But that stuff is, I'm very, like I said, I get very obsessive about things, so I love that work, so if you can ask anybody at Jazz Lincoln Center that I work with, I've never turned down a project. Yeah. I mean, I've done that stuff on Thanksgiving Day when they email me the day before Thanksgiving. I say yes, I love doing it. Yeah. So it's a different muscle, but it's a good side hustle, like I don't do it full time, but it pays good, and it's like I like doing it because I like the anal retentiveness of making everything look great. The Broadway stuff and the stressfulness kind of thing, you get used to it at a certain point, but music starts to very much feel like a job. So my last 4 years in New York after I left the Hot Sardines, I was just jobbing around town like everybody else, working, 5-6 nights a week. And started getting to the point where I could feel myself not wanting to do that for the rest of my life, And I was playing with a lot of people that were insane musicians, but in their 50s and 60s, and kind of just being like, I don't want to be having to do this when I'm that age.
Sure.
No shade on those musicians who do, but just me personally, I could just feel myself not wanting to do that or be in that kind of position. And like I said before, I knew that I was going to be going that route with my career, going into the Broadway world, if I continued to stay there. So I got offered a job here at UT in 2019, the fall of 2018. And they offered it to me, and I was pretty quickly, I told my wife, it's like, I don't think we're going to do this. I don't know if I'm ready to leave New York yet. But the more I thought about it, I kind of sat on the offer for a couple of weeks. The more I thought about it, I started to think to myself that I started to tell myself that I don't think this is my contribution to music is playing in Broadway. I think that what I'm meant to do is to be an educator and show people that a career in music is possible, and you don't have to suffer for it. Like, you can make a way in this industry and be successful, And I know some cats, they get sort of miffed when you start talking about financial aspects of the industry, but I grew up in a very loving home, but we did not have a lot of money. I grew up in a trailer park, so it's always been on my mind. Like, I want to live comfortably. I don't care about being rich, but I want to be able to not have to worry about money. And so I've crafted my career in that kind of light. So the more I thought about it, I said, look, I have a lot to, telling myself, I have a lot to offer students. I wasn't a very talented student person, like when I was a young person. I think I could play at a reasonably high level. I think I can really help young people who want to do this, And so the more I kind of thought about it, and I'm sitting in the pit of whatever show I was in, I was like, wow, I'm really starting to hate being in this Broadway pit, And it's stressful, and I'm having panic attacks. So I came around really quickly to the fact is like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do, is to be teaching. And I never thought that way. I mean, I got my doctorate at UT, but I never thought I would teach.
Yeah.
Being in New York, was like, this is what I'm going to do forever. This is great. But the older you get, I don't know, it starts to become a real grind. I was drinking a lot, and, it just starts to become unsustainable, for certain personality types. Some people, they have to be in New York, they start getting panic attacks when they leave, But
Sure.
for me, it never felt like home. And I just started telling myself, like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I think I'm supposed to go back to Austin and be a college professor, and it felt weird to say that. But, it's honestly probably the luckiest thing I've ever done, because the pandemic started like in 2020. So we moved in the fall of 2019. So, I mean, I think it's the luckiest thing I've ever done,
Perfect timing, yeah. And funny how that came back around in a roundabout way, that it's like you started those first 4 weeks of your college career was wanting to be an educator, and then getting out and then coming back around. Obviously, I mean, you do have so much to offer. I've taken lessons with you because I put a lot of stock in what you have to say, because not only do you have like the technical experience and advice, but you also have just like the real life applicable experience that I can learn from.
And I'm not a jazz master. there are other people that people can study with that are way more qualified than me to teach somebody how to play the blues or rhythm changes. I'm not, I struggle with that aspect of being a college professor all the time. It's like, who am I to teach this stuff, when there are people like Eric Alexander out there, and Joe Farnsworth, and like these amazing people. But what I do feel like I do have is I have some real world experience, and I can teach people how to play the trumpet, and I can show people the music in a way that I was shown. Luckily, it's like, if you want to be good, you need to check out this stuff, and then we can talk about how to do it. But it's a misnomer for students, I think, to think that like you go to college and they're going to show you how to play. Like, no, you show yourself how to play by checking this music out. But you don't have to go to college to know how to play jazz music. Someone like me needed to. I was, some country bumpkin that grew up in a trailer park. Loving family. I have a very supportive family, but I had no business playing jazz music. But I fell in love with the music, and I luckily had people that showed me the recordings. Like, you want to play good? Check this out. Study this. So I do think I have that kind of thing with students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask a couple quick questions. We'll get out of here. Speaking of advice, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given, musically or otherwise?
Shut up. Show up. Shut up. Speak when spoken to. Play your ass off. Those are the 4 most important things for a musician. Speak when spoken to. Show up on time. Look good. Look presentable. It's really super easy stuff, but a lot of people really kind of mess it up. But just be easy to work with. Don't be a drag. Yeah. Be easy to work with. And practice and play your ass off. It gets to the point, at least in my age now, it's like, if you don't play at a very, very high level, you're not in the room generally. You're not on these gigs. The people who are on the gigs, they play really, really good. So like, that's a given at this point. You play really good. You sound really good. You know about music. But what gets people fired from stuff is that like they look bad. Like they're not shaving. They're like you know what I mean? Like they're not taking care of like you need to look presentable on the gig. You need to show up on time.
It's the first thing that people perceive about you.
Yeah. Well, in Detroit, they have a saying there is that they see you before they hear you.
Yeah.
Rodney Whitaker, Sean Dobbins, all these, Randy Gillespie, all these cats who were mentors to me, who grew up playing, Rodney Whitaker grew up playing with Roy Hargrove, Wynton Marsalis. Randy Gillespie grew up playing with Wes Montgomery. Sean Dobbins is like the top call cat in Detroit. Sean would always be saying that. They see you before they hear you, And for me, it's borne out in my career. It's like, yeah, you need to look presentable. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you're going to play jazz music, it doesn't apply to all musics, But, you need to have an air of professionalism about yourself.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. What is a record that you would suggest everyone go listen to immediately once they finish this episode?
Nat King Cole sings, George Shearing plays. Or maybe it's George Shearing plays, Nat King Cole sings. It's Nat King Cole singing, George Shearing playing piano with a string orchestra with arrangements by Ralph Carmichael. It is my #1 favorite jazz record of all time. You got to get that one. It's a lot of people know that one song, "Pick Yourself Up," from Breaking Bad. So that version of that song is from that record. Unbelievable.
Amazing. Yeah, that was like so teed up. Like I didn't give you that question beforehand.
That's like when people say, "Oh, what's your favorite record?" Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I don't know." It's like, no, that's my favorite record. I love that record.
Yeah, amazing. And then this question hasn't changed. The way that we end, if you remember, it's we all have gigs from hell where things go wild, and you had one of my favorite stories, and it feels weird to say favorite because it was so painful, but the whole thing of playing that wedding and the person coming in and reading and being like, best man, maid of honor, mother of the bride, deceased.
Yeah, no, it was
just going insane. But I mean, it feels hard to top that one. Yeah. But what could you think of as a gig from hell where something just was wild?
Jeez. Gosh. Well, I'll tell you, I did this gig. It wasn't like anything really bad happened, but so I was sort of in the group of musicians that was the first iteration of Postmodern Jukebox. So Scott Bradley was the music director of Sleep No More before I was. And he sort of developed Postmodern Jukebox on the stage of Sleep No More. And so he started getting pretty, he was going viral on YouTube and viral on Reddit back when that was a big thing to go viral on YouTube, And so he was starting to record videos every Sunday at his apartment. And it eventually got too busy, so he left Sleep No More. That's when I got in. And then I was doing some videos for him. Sometimes his videos don't have trumpets, sometimes they do. And I was doing them. And so he got so popular that his band was working all the time, Postmodern Jukebox. So we started to take gigs and hire out some of the vocalists that were on some of these videos.
Sure.
And so, maybe Postmodern Jukebox is in, Tanzania or something. And then you'd get a call to go, okay, can you go to Italy and play like a private event for, the people who own Dolce & Gabbana? It was like crazy gigs, right? So
Sure.
Christina Gaddy, who is one of the singers that was the early iteration of Postmodern Jukebox, she got a gig from Scott Bradley saying, okay, we're going to go play for these Russian oligarchs in Nice. And so this is the gig. It pays this. They're going to fly us first class. And so, okay, cool. And she asked me to be the MD. And so I said, okay, fine. So on the flight over, I'm like writing the charts out, doing the arrangements. And we get there, and these, the gig was in a castle on top of a mountain. So you had to drive like an hour to get to the gig.
Yeah.
We show up, and we're starting to play, and like these Russian like billionaires were so not into jazz. Like they just were not into it at all. And so we're playing, and like it's like us, we're near this like infinity pool, and then the people at the wedding who were supposed to be doing the cocktail hour, they're like a football field away from us, like, and they're only coming close to us to get drinks. And so Christina, she's like, oh man, something's weird. Like I don't get it. I don't understand why they don't like us. And I was like, yeah, well, some people don't like jazz music. It's fine. And so we're supposed to play for an hour there, and then they flew a stage by helicopter on top of this mountain for us to play on. So it's like a rock group style stage with lights and smoke and like all this stuff. They brought it for us and the other band. The other band was the band that was fronted by the woman who had won the Australian version of like Who's Got Talent, whatever that show is.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
an Australian version of it. She had won it, so they flew her in from Australia and her band to like be the main act,
Sure.
So it's like us on this stage, and the couple had decided to set the entire wedding up like 2,000 feet away from us because nobody was into the music. And so we're on this preposterous stage with smoke and lights and playing for nobody,
No.
But then the singer from Australia and her band, they were super late, so we had to play for like 2 hours to nobody and like just getting the stink eye from everybody. And then finally, like, we're done, and then we got paid, and then we left. But it was just like they must have spent $50,000 on us
God.
to get us there, and they just so not into it, So it's just like, all right, man, who cares, The check's gonna cash. So.
Yeah.
So
A gig is a gig is a gig.
yeah,
Right.
what can you do? You can't make people like what you do, So
Fair enough.